Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The phone didn't just slip from my hand. I threw it, watching the device arc through the rain-slicked air of the balcony before shattering against the steel railing, the screen spider-webbing into 1,000 shards of black glass, just like my life. Done. I gasped, the word tearing out of my throat like a jagged stone, my breath hitching in the freezing London air as the reality of what I'd just done crashed over me. I had just severed the tether to 3 years of my life, 3 years of gaslighting, 3 years of shrinking myself to fit into Marcus's suffocating little box, and the adrenaline was already fading into a cold, trembling terror. I gripped the wet railing, my knuckles turning white, staring down at the city lights blurring through my tears, wondering how I was going to pay rent, wondering if I was worthless, wondering if Marcus was right about me being unlovable. I didn't hear the sliding glass door open behind me. I didn't hear the heavy, deliberate footsteps of handmade Italian leather on the concrete. The only warning I had was the sudden absence of the wind biting at my back, blocked by a presence so large and imposing it felt like a mountain had moved behind me. The scent hit me first, not the rain, but something deeper, oud wood, crisp linen, and the terrifyingly expensive aroma of unmatched power. I froze. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew that scent. Every employee at Thorne and Sterling Global knew that scent and feared it. Slowly, terrified, I turned around. Alistair Thorne stood there. The CEO. The Ice King of Canary Wharf. A man rumored to have fired a VP for wearing the wrong shade of navy. He was 6'3" of pure, unadulterated intimidation, backlit by the glow of the office, his sharp, angular face cast in shadow. He was looking at the shattered remains of my phone, then slowly, agonizingly, his gaze lifted to meet mine. Usually, his eyes were the color of a frozen lake, indifferent, cutting. But tonight, under the erratic flash of distant lightning, they looked different. Darker. Hungrier. Who? Alistair's voice was a low rumble that vibrated through the soles of my feet. Made you cry, Julian? Chapter 1. The Glass Fortress. To understand the sheer terror of that moment, you have to understand Alistair Thorne. He wasn't just a boss. He was an institution. He moved through the corridors of our architectural firm like a predator stalking its territory. He didn't speak. He decreed. He didn't smile. He assessed. I, Julian Vane, was a junior architect, a speck of dust in his immaculate kingdom. I had spent 2 years working here, and I was fairly certain Alistair didn't know my name until 3 months ago when I accidentally spilled coffee near, not on, near, his blueprints. He had looked at me with such disdain I thought I'd turn into stone. Since then, I had avoided him like the plague, burying myself in my work, trying to be invisible. But invisibility is hard when your personal life is imploding. Marcus, my now ex-boyfriend, had a talent for timing. He knew I was working late on the prestigious Helix project, the bid that could make or break our firm's quarter. He knew I was stressed. So, naturally, he chose 9 p.m. on a Tuesday to call me and tell me he'd been sleeping with his personal trainer. Again, you're just so boring, Julian. Marcus had sneered through the speaker, his voice slurring slightly. Always working for that tyrant. You're never home. You're cold. You're just like him. That was the breaking point. The accusation of being cold. Me, who had spent nights cooking dinners Marcus never ate, who had formatted his CVs, who had held him when he lost his job. It snapped something inside me. I had stormed out to the executive balcony, usually forbidden to junior staff, thinking I was alone in the skyscraper. I wasn't. Standing there now, facing Alistair, I felt stripped bare. My defenses were gone. My eyes were puffy, my breathing erratic, and my shirt was damp from the blowing rain. Mr. Thorne, I stammered, instinct telling me to apologize, to retreat. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were still in the building. I'll clean up the glass. I'll go. I moved to crouch down, reaching for the shards of my phone with trembling fingers. Stop. The command was soft, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. I froze, hand hovering over the broken glass. Alistair stepped forward. He didn't look at the mess. He was looking at me. He closed the distance between us, entering my personal space in a way that should have been threatening, yet felt strangely stabilizing. He reached down, Not to the floor, but to me. His hand, large and warm, wrapped around my wrist, pulling me up from my crouch. He didn't let go. His thumb brushed over the pulse point on my wrist, feeling the frantic rabbit kick of my heart. I didn't ask about the phone, Julian, he said, his voice dropping an octave, slipping under my skin. I asked who made you cry. My breath hitched. He knew my name. The Ice King knew my name. It's personal, sir, I whispered, looking down at his chest, unable to meet those piercing eyes. His suit was immaculate, a three-piece charcoal masterpiece that probably cost more than my student loans. Just a breakup. A bad one. A bad one, Alistair repeated, tasting the words. He said I was cold. I confessed, the humiliation bubbling up again. That I worked too much. That I was boring. A silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. The rain lashed against the glass barrier of the balcony, sealing us in this bubble of high-altitude tension. Alistair's grip on my wrist tightened, just a fraction. He stepped closer, forcing me to look up. His face was unreadable, mask-like, but his eyes were blazing. Boring, Alistair murmured, a dark amusement curling the corner of his lip. The man who redesigned the atrium of the Shanghai Tower in a single weekend because the lighting didn't feel like dawn is boring? The man who wears mismatched socks because he thinks symmetry is the enemy of creativity. I gaped at him. You noticed my socks. I notice everything, Julian, Alistair said. The intensity in his voice made my knees weak. I notice how you bite your lip when the CAD software crashes. I notice how you drink tea instead of coffee because the caffeine makes your hands shake. And I certainly notice when someone has been foolish enough to shatter you. This wasn't happening. I was hallucinating. The stress had finally caused a psychotic break. Alistair Thorne did not notice junior architects. He certainly didn't memorize their beverage preferences. Sir, come with me, he interrupted, turning and pulling me toward the warmth of the office. Where? I need to finish the Helix renderings. Fuck the renderings, Alistair said. The curse word, coming from his usually pristine mouth, was more shocking than the lightning. He didn't stop until he dragged me into his private office, a sanctum I had never entered. It was vast, dimly lit by amber lamps, smelling of leather and whiskey. He pushed me gently onto a plush velvet sofa. Sit. Stay. He moved to a crystal decanter, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He walked back, handing me one. His fingers brushed mine, sending a jolt of electricity up my arm that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Drink, he commanded. It will steady your nerves. I took a sip. It burned, then soothed. I watched him over the rim of the glass. He leaned against the edge of his massive mahogany desk, ankles crossed, watching me with that unnerving intensity. Why? I asked, the alcohol giving me a sliver of courage. Why are you doing this? You're supposed to be a tyrant? A monster? Alistair finished for me, a dry smirk touching his lips. I am. To them. He set his glass down and walked toward me, not stopping until he was looming over the sofa. He placed a hand on the back of the couch, leaning down so his face was inches from mine. I could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. But you aren't them, Julian, he whispered. You never were. Chapter 2. The ride home, he didn't let me go back to my desk. He didn't let me take the tube. My driver is downstairs, Alistair stated, shrugging into his trench coat. It wasn't a suggestion. I can't ask you to, you aren't asking. I'm insisting. He grabbed his umbrella. Unless you plan on walking to Hackney in a thunderstorm with a broken heart and no phone. I deflated. No, sir. The ride was silent, but not the awkward silence I expected. It was a charged silence. The interior of the Bentley was soundproofed against the chaotic London streets. I sat pressed against the door, trying to make myself small, but Alistair's presence filled the car. He was on his phone, typing furiously. I assumed he was working, managing his empire. It's done, he said suddenly, locking his phone and sliding it into his pocket. What is? I've had a security detail sent to your apartment to ensure your ex-partner has vacated the premises. If he hasn't, he will be persuaded. I choked on air. You what? Mr. Thorne, you can't just send private security to my flat. He has a key, does he not? Alistair looked at me, his expression stony. You just ended a toxic relationship with a man you described as manipulative. I will not have my lead architect for the Helix project looking over his shoulder in his own home. Lead architect? I squeaked. I'm a junior associate. Alistair looked out the window, watching the rain streak the glass. Not anymore. I fired Henderson this morning. You're taking over. What? My brain was misfiring. Henderson was the senior VP. Why? Because Henderson designs boxes. You design homes. And because Henderson didn't know the difference between limestone and travertine. Alistair turned back to me. Don't look so terrified, Julian. It doesn't suit you. Competence suits you. Arrogance, even. But not fear. We pulled up to my curb. It was a shabby building, miles away from the luxury Alistair was used to. I felt a pang of shame. Thank you, sir, I said, reaching for the door handle. Julian. I stopped. If he comes back, Alistair said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low rumble again. If he calls. If he breathes in your direction. You tell me. Why? I asked again, my voice trembling. Alistair looked at me for a long moment, his mask slipping just enough to reveal a cavernous depth of longing that took my breath away. Because, he said softly, I don't like people touching things that belong to me. I scrambled out of the car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. As the Bentley pulled away, I realized two things. 1. I was terrified. 2. I had never felt safer in my life. Chapter 3. The gala 2 weeks passed. The dynamic in the office shifted, though only I seemed to notice the tectonic plates moving beneath the surface. To everyone else, Alistair was still the Ice King. He barked orders, he critiqued designs with ruthless efficiency, he made grown men cry in board meetings. But with me, it was subtle. A hand lingering on my shoulder during a presentation. A cup of my specific herbal tea appearing on my desk when I was working late, with no note. The way he would catch my eye across a crowded conference room and hold my gaze until I was the one forced to look away, blushing furiously. He had promoted me, and the pressure was immense. I was drowning in the Helix project, trying to prove I wasn't just a charity case. I barely slept. Then came the annual Architects Gala. It was the social event of the season, a black tie affair held at the Tate Modern. Everyone who was anyone would be there, including, unfortunately, Marcus. Marcus worked for a rival firm, a fact that had always caused tension. I knew he would be there. I almost didn't go, but Alistair had left a garment bag on my desk that morning. Inside was a tuxedo, midnight blue velvet, slim fit. It was exquisite. The note attached was typed on heavy cardstock. Asterisk wear this. I'll pick you up at 7. Asterisk, and so, there I was, walking into the Tate Modern on the arm of Alistair Thorne. The paparazzi flashed blindly as we entered. Alistair's hand rested on the small of my back, a scorching brand through the velvet. Breathe, he murmured in my ear, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. You look magnificent. Let them stare. They're staring at you, sir, I mumbled. No, Alistair corrected, tightening his grip on my waist. They are staring at us. And wondering how I managed to capture the sun, I looked at him, startled by the poetry of his words. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at me with that same intense, world-consuming gaze he'd had on the balcony. We moved through the room like royalty. Alistair introduced me to investors, not as his junior, but as the visionary behind the Helix. He touted my work with a pride that made my chest ache. Then I saw him. Marcus. He was standing near the bar, looking disheveled, holding a drink. He saw me, and his eyes widened. Then they narrowed into slits of jealous rage. He marched over, ignoring the social cues of the high society crowd. Julian, Marcus slurred, blocking our path. Look at you. Playing dress up. Alistair stopped. The temperature in the immediate vicinity seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus, I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. Please, not here. Oh, not here? Marcus laughed bitterly. You think because you're sleeping with the boss you're too good for me now? Is that how you got the promotion? On your knees. The room went silent. The music seemed to stop. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't. Careful. Alistair's voice cut through the air like a whip. It wasn't loud, but it carried a deadly frequency. Marcus sneered at Alistair. Oh, save it, Thorne. Everyone knows you're an icy prick. You don't have feelings. You're just using him. And when you're bored, you'll toss him aside just like I did. Marcus didn't finish the sentence. Alistair moved. It was a blur of motion. One moment he was standing beside me. The next he had stepped forward, invading Marcus's space with the menace of an apex predator. He didn't hit him. Alistair Thorne didn't brawl. He destroyed with words. "Listen to me very carefully," Alistair said, his voice a low, terrifying hiss that only the three of us could hear. "You are a mediocre man with mediocre talent. You spent 3 years draining the light out of a genius because you couldn't handle his brilliance. You made him feel small so you could feel big." Alistair stepped closer, towering over Marcus. "If you ever speak to him again, if you ever slander his name, I will buy your firm. I will buy the building your firm rents. I will buy the bank that holds your mortgage. And I will evict you from your own life. Do you understand?" Marcus turned pale, stumbling back. You're crazy. I am a man who protects what is his," Alistair said coldly. "Get out of my sight." Marcus scrambled away, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there stunned. My heart was hammering. Alistair turned to me, the rage in his eyes instantly replaced by concern. He reached out, cupping my face in his hands, ignoring the hundreds of people watching. "Are you all right?" he asked, his thumbs brushing my cheekbones. I whispered. "You would buy a bank?" Alistair let out a short, rough laugh. "I'd buy the city if it meant you smiled, Julian." Chapter 4. The confession. We left the gala immediately. Alistair didn't take me home. He took me to his penthouse. It was a glass palace in the sky, overlooking the Thames. It was beautiful, cold, and lonely. Just like him. Or so I had thought. He poured us drinks again, but this time, he didn't sit behind a desk. He stood by the window, looking out at the city. I stood behind him, watching the tension in his broad shoulders. "Did you mean it?" I asked quietly. "Mean what?" He didn't turn around. That I belong to you." Alistair turned slowly. He looked tired, the armor finally cracking completely. "I have wanted you for 2 years, Julian. From the moment I saw you arguing with the contractor about the ethics of sustainable bamboo. You were so passionate, so alive. In a world of gray, you were vivid technicolor." He walked toward me, stopping inches away. "I stayed away because I am difficult," he admitted, a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. "I am obsessive. I am cold. I knew if I let myself have you, I would consume you. I didn't want to extinguish your light." "You didn't extinguish it," I said, stepping closer, my heart making the decision before my brain could catch up. "You protected it. Tonight. You saved me." I overheard the call. Alistair confessed, his voice rough. "That night on the balcony. I didn't just happen to be there. I saw you leave your desk looking like you were bleeding internally. I followed you. And when I heard him breaking you, it took every ounce of self-control not to throw him off a bridge." He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he touched my waist. "I am not a good man, Julian. I am selfish. I want you. I want to wake up to you. I want to watch you draw. I want to be the only one who sees you fall apart." I looked up at him, seeing the cold boss for what he really was, a lonely king waiting for his queen. "Then take me," I whispered. "I don't want a good man, Alistair. I want you." Something snapped in him. He groaned, a low, guttural sound, and then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a reclaiming. It was hungry, desperate, possessive. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head back, deepening the kiss until I was dizzy. I clung to his lapels, melting into him. He tasted of whiskey and repressed desire. He lifted me up effortlessly, my legs wrapping around his waist, and carried me toward the bedroom. "Mine," he growled against my neck, biting lightly at the sensitive skin there. "My architect. My Julian. My world." As he laid me down on the silk sheets, looking at me with that gaze, the gaze that said nothing else in the universe existed but me, I realized the breakup hadn't been an end. It had been a beginning. The ice had melted, and beneath it was a fire that would burn for a lifetime. And that is how the Ice King of Canary Wharf finally found his warmth. If you enjoyed seeing Alistair destroy a toxic ex and claim what was his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a partner who kept their distance for 2 years to protect you? Or is that just an excuse? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.